Coming up on Over a Barrel, OPEC announces they're going to increase production and then does an about face. Plus, the Federal Reserve says it's now time to start cutting interest rates. That and a whole lot more right here on Over a Barrel, which starts right now. Welcome to the program. I'm Matt McClain. He is the other co-host, Patrick DeHaan. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, Matt. How's everything going today?
Oh, it's a beautiful day in paradise, right? And before we even get into the program, make sure you like or subscribe to the different channels that you happen to be watching or listening to us on. We're all just about everywhere, right? You know, it's a lot of fun. And by the way, also get those questions into us as well, of course, at Over a Barrel Show, or also directly to us, and also to email podcast@gasbuddy.com. Now that we've got some of the formalities out of the way, Patrick, we got a lot to talk about, and some of the things to talk about, some very exciting news, because I'm now paying $2.70 something a gallon, and I'm thoroughly liking it. I just want you to know, but there may be some reasons behind that, and if not, then I'm even happier because OPEC has made a large announcement this week, but then sort of backtracked. Okay, break all this down for us. I have no idea what's going on with all this. This is crazy. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Matt, some breaking news here in the last days. You mentioned OPEC, and I think we covered on the last program that OPEC was going to start restoring some of the oil production that they had taken away. That was back, I think it was June of 2023 that OPEC decided to cut oil production. They were going to bring it back, and now with oil prices struggling to hit that $70 barrel mark, they said, forget it. We are going to delay restoring this oil production. That's where we are now. OPEC now delaying their oil production restoration. So a little bit of bad news, although, the news lifted oil by over $1 a barrel, but oil prices still really struggling to maintain $70 a barrel. Actually down at $68 a barrel. So still below that $70 barrel mark. Now, as we see here, OPEC was planning on restoring about 180,000 barrels a day. But again, with oil prices down in the dumps as of late, below the $70 barrel mark, OPEC decided that they are going to wait at least a couple of months. Now, they will be meeting here as we get closer to Thanksgiving. They're going to have a full meeting shortly thereafter, and that's probably where we'll now have to wait to get more information on if they're going to continue with this plan. Keep in mind, some countries in OPEC have been waiting to ramp up their quotas for a long period of time. You'll remember that a couple countries were really getting into it with Saudi Arabia and Russia because they wanted to produce more oil. Saudi Arabia and Russia wanted to produce less. So there's been some back and forth, but for now, again, OPEC has agreed to delay restoring output for at least a couple of months, Matt. But the good news is that's not really impacting oil prices. As I mentioned, oil price is still down. And that is good news for what your wallet is paying. You'd mentioned paying sub $3 prices in, really a lot of states.
Yeah. Right now,
Gas Buddy now tracking
Missouri,
11 states where you can find. There's a lot. We can rattle off the list here as we see it on our screen. If you're watching our video, you'll see it real quick. But Oklahoma, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, South Carolina, Arkansas, Ewan, Kentucky, Missouri, Kansas joined the list yesterday. That's 11 states. The next states that could potentially join in the next week or so, North Carolina and Georgia. And there's a lot of states, Matt. Look at this. 25 states are within 20 cents of getting to that level. So certainly some great news. And the national average does keep declining. We are now at $3.27 a gallon.
So I'm seeing prices in my area, neck of the woods. I am actually able to get it as low as $2.72 a gallon here in the Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri region. That makes me super happy. And I'll give you one guess as to which state is not 272 out of the three states I just rattled off.
I think it's the same state that I might be contending with that same issue. The great state of Illinois that has been raising its gas tax on an annual basis. The same thing. It's not $2.99 gas, but even here in Chicago, which has to use that reformulated blend, although we've been getting a waiver for that. Even here in Chicago, Matt, my station dropped 20 cents a gallon in the last week or so. We're down to 3.79. That seems like a bargain for me. It's not a $2.99 price, but I did cross the border into Wisconsin. Wow. As soon as you cross that border, it immediately fell 70 cents a gallon. It's $2.99. The station I went to in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, $2.93 a gallon. Gas Buddy tracking 40,000 stations in the nation below $3 a gallon. So this is not, this is not the needle in the haystack anymore.
Can I get $1.99? You can't blame me for asking.
You can. You absolutely can get $1.99 for a half gallon of gasoline.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
we'll be like that station in Washington that started selling race gas for half a gallon price because they couldn't change the pump to over $9.99. And race gas, by the way, very high octane, very expensive, but kind of a interesting way to solve the problem of when you have to go over 10. They decided to sell in half gallon increments. I'm not sure the Department of Weights and Measures would really like their approach on that.
Wouldn't think so. So in the OPEC announcement, obviously, hey, we're going to increase production. Crude oil starts falling in price. Oh, wait, we're changing our mind. We're going to hold off on that for a few months. Okay, well, if that's the case and the prices are where they are right now, once they do start increasing production, assuming that they go ahead and do that, can we look at even further falling prices from where we are right now? Or do you think that they're factoring in, that the market is factoring in the increase in production right now? And once they finally do, it'll just kind of be like nothing's changed?
Yeah. Matt, to your point, the market is going to factor in everything that it knows. And it now knows that there's a high probability that OPEC is simply delaying the restoration by a couple of months. So absolutely, as we look today, even after this OPEC announcement, oil prices still are struggling. I was quoted as saying oil has been on life support because the Libya crisis, in which Libya has basically halted exports, that hasn't impacted oil prices. OPEC's delay has not impacted oil prices. It seems like oil just can't be resuscitated right now from its fall. The last 5 days, I mean, look at this. We were over 70 just a few days ago. And here you're seeing a little bit of life support, but then what goes up comes straight back down. So it's been rather incredible to watch these oil markets the last couple of days and basically shrug off every piece of news.
That's very, very interesting all the way around.
And by the way, look at this. Look, we are at the lowest price at this moment that we've been this year. If we go back a full year, we are now, let's see, look at that. Look at that. We are 68, 61. We're lower than we've been in the last year. Now look back
year and a half, was it January?
Yeah, look at this. So briefly right here still, okay, so we're the lowest since really March of 2023.
Yeah.
We're
almost
actually
a year and a half.
Yeah, and think about it this way. OPEC cut production back in June of last year, Matt. Let's look at the price then. $71 a barrel. We are now at $68 a barrel. And OPEC is not talking about cutting production further. They're talking about delaying raising production. So how the turntables have turned.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I am thoroughly interested to find out exactly. I mean, the cheaper the gas price, the happier I always get. And that's just an understatement.
I haven't noticed that.
I mean, I try to curb my enthusiasm for our podcast, just so you know.
Your enthusiasm's always at $1.99, but you can unleash some of that enthusiasm. Matt, by the way, today's cheapest price in the nation. You have any best guesses for the cheapest price station?
$2.23 a gallon.
Not far off. $2.48 for credit, $2.38 for cash. That was at a station down here in Mississippi. But yeah, look at all these blue states. Yeah,
I'm going to be traveling through Mississippi next week. So where is this station at so that I make sure I take pictures?
That's in Gulfport, Mississippi. Look at Mississippi's a tall state. It's probably, look at that county. Pearl River County, $2.62 a gallon. Yeah, real nice to see. And by the way, for our friends that listen from Canada as well, we can certainly talk about Canada here. There are some developments, political developments too, that are worth mentioning. Even Canada, look at that. The average there. If Americans ever think we're getting it raw, just the poor Canadians up there paying the equivalent of $1.52 a liter. A
And a
liter.
northern bless your heart from my lips to your ears. That's awful.
So
Uh,
152 would be the equivalent of 575 Canadian dollars per gallon. So, we complain at 327, and our friends to the north, who send us a lot of oil, by the way, are paying the equivalent of 575 Canadian
why? Why are
taxes.
they paying
They
so
have a
much
carbon
more?
tax. And that's one thing, we haven't really ever talked about carbon tax in the US, but in Canada, the carbon tax goes up every year. So there's that.
Wow. So that's expensive.
But yeah, you look at the cost of doing things, and interestingly enough, by looking at this graphic here, you can instantly see, it's very similar, Matt, to the U.S. By the way, if I change this map, look at the coastal regions, the most expensive gas and the cheapest gas is in the inland area. If we go back to the U.S. map, you'll also see that the West Coast is really expensive and the East Coast tends to be expensive. So, certainly some similarities there that really interesting to look at.
I tell you, it's a very dynamic thing considering gas is gas is gas. I mean, if it's unleaded, I'm assuming 87 octane coming out of the tanks there in Canada versus here in the United States, I am assuming it's par for the course. It's essentially the same product.
Yeah, it really is. But taxes and state regulations are a lot of the difference. Now, making a quick jump here, kind of the report card. This is our 2024 fuel outlook. For those that haven't seen it, we put out a fuel outlook in December of 2023, in which we try to forecast gas prices going out 12 months, which can be a crapshoot. It's not easy to make an accurate forecast when you're talking about a commodity that can fluctuate as much as oil can. Kind of nice. We're a little bit on the low side right now, Matt. Back in December of last year, we predicted December average prices would be somewhere in the ballpark of 324 to 367 a gallon. That's a big range, by the way, and a lot of the range is so wide because hurricane season, which is unpredictable. But we're on the low side of that, right? 327 is only 3 cents above what we anticipated for the low side of the range. And then moving forward, hey, it's not 199, Matt, but we anticipate that at some point in the next couple of months, we're probably going to see that 299 price come out nationally. And we probably have the best chance of any year in the last 3 years. Well, I should say so. In the last 3 years, we did hit the last time we saw a national average of $3 a gallon was back in 2021. Of course, we were still in the midst of a pandemic then. So
right.
Kind of nice to see these low prices come back out, and by Thanksgiving or Christmas, we will probably see a national average of below $3 a gallon.
Fingers crossed.
Yay!
Right? So there's one other potential. I'm questioning whether or not it's going to send prices upward or downward, but you get to make the comments on it. The Federal Reserve, in fact, the Bank of New York President John Williams is now saying it is now appropriate for the central bank to reduce interest rates given progress on lowering inflation and a cooling in the labor market, saying that there has been significant progress toward the Fed's dual goals of maintaining stable prices and maximum employment, and that the risks to achieving both have moved in to a state of equilibrium, if you will. I am assuming that obviously you and I have talked about this on the podcast. The better off the economy does, the more people use gasoline, the more demand is out there, and it becomes a supply and demand issue. Short term, long term, what are you thinking when it comes to something like this, and how a lowering of the interest rates after the past several years, we've been only sending the interest rates up by 1/4 to 1/2 percentage point every time they decide to make a vote on changing the rates. How does this play out in the oil markets?
Well, I mean, by the way, I just showed you that oil prices were down a little over 1% today. The stock market also is down a little under 1%. These two oftentimes will track together, right? When the stock market goes way up or way down, oil prices track. To the degree that you're talking about, the two are kind of tied at the hip, right? As goes the economy, as goes gas prices. So if the Fed, largely expected, as you mentioned, to cut interest rates here at the September meeting, if they do, the market will probably go up. Now, if the Fed cuts by more than 25 basis points, that's probably going to raise some red flags. Like, why is the Fed going big on this? That could raise concerns that there's a recession or that there's data that the Fed may see that is worrisome. If we get the 25 basis point cut, I think the market will rally. Oil prices probably will go up because obviously the prognosis of falling rates makes borrowing less expensive and more Americans will probably borrow. Now, 25 basis point cut when the rate is still so elevated is probably not going to open the floodgates, right? It probably will gradually allow for more borrowing. Ultimately, I do think oil prices will trend higher as the Fed continues to cut interest rates. And that's because cutting interest rates is going to accelerate economic growth. And when you accelerate economic growth, you're going to accelerate oil demand, not only in the US, but abroad. So that's kind of the outlook, is that oil prices, they probably won't skyrocket, but generally when the economy is stronger, oil prices trend higher. And that was the case, by the way, under President Trump. He came into the White House back in 2017. Gas prices were kind of below $2 a gallon. But the great news was that the economy was strengthening through 2017, 2018, 2019, and that caused gas prices to go up. In fact, at one point in 2019, gas prices hit $2.98 a gallon because the economy was growing. So it doesn't matter if Harris wins in November or if Trump wins, gas prices will probably trend higher because the prognosis is that the economy will grow. Unless one of the candidates who wins botches that, then we could have a different outcome.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So next year,
intrigued.
Now the wild card here is, we obviously have talked earlier about OPEC, right? If OPEC raises production, that's going to change the calculus, right? Because with more oil on the table, even if there is more demand, that could hold prices in check, right? If demand grows faster than supply, prices are going to go up. But if demand grows at the same pace as supply, prices could stay constant. So that's where the balances, right, really even out. If supply goes up and demand goes up, well, prices are climbing in step. If the same happens, right, prices should hold consistent. So that's where all these different, scales come into play. One is rising faster than the other. One is going lower. That's where the checks fall out of balance. And that's when you can have prices shoot through the roof like they did in 2022, because we were coming out of a pandemic and demand was going way faster, way quicker than production could follow. Right. And that's why prices shot up to $5. But then prices shooting up to $5 incentivized more oil production, which is why over time now prices have come back down. So I mean that's the market. It's always going to be looking for balance, and that's why low oil prices are the best cure for low oil prices, because low oil prices will eventually lead to a drop in production.
Yeah, and in sticking with some of the theme here, very quickly from our friends at CNBC, August payrolls grew by less than expected, 142,000, but unemployment rate ticked down to 4.2%. That was also talking about the interest rates. This is all tied together, right? So they are talking about the reason why it's time to start lowering interest rates is because they don't want to accidentally move the economy over into a recession. They're trying to really thread that needle very carefully. And one of the main components happens to be the unemployment aspect and the amount of job growth that they are seeing every month. So now that they're seeing, which 142,000 sounds like an awful lot of jobs, but when you factor in all 50 states plus U.S. territories and the quantity of the ability for all of that, it's actually quite a bit down from what we had been seeing, even a year ago where it was hundreds of thousands of new
And
jobs a month. It's a
exactly.
lot.
It is a lot. It's all about maintaining that balance that the market's expecting, right? Because if all of a sudden we added way more jobs where it's like, holy smokes, here we go back into, a lot of growth. And if we don't add enough jobs, it's sending, red flags or alarm bells for a recession. So that's why, right? It's important that that growth is modest. It's not too fast and it's not too slow. It's just right.
I've
And
got to
that's where
admit,
gas prices have been kind of falling because now we're better balanced.
I was one of the very skeptical people who didn't think that they were going to be able to thread this needle as well as they have.
Well,
I
and
I mean,
hindsight's 2020. So, they could be misthreading the needle right now, but it's so hard to pull this off. You really have to watch the data and to trust it and to take a slower approach. So, if the Fed cuts by 50 basis points, that's not the slow approach. That's going to that's going to put some alarm bells out there. And that's maybe not what you want. So, all in
so
all,
this might be the beginning of the unwinding of the things that they have been doing over the past several years. Then,
right. And they don't want to unwind too fast, right? They don't want to make borrowing expensive and then suddenly cheap overnight because then everyone is going to rush into the market. Think about how many people have been waiting on the sidelines to buy homes, right? People aren't moving. There's not enough homes in the market because interest rates are high. I'm sitting here with a 2.5% rate in Chicago, and I'm not going to move anywhere until I can find a house. If I did want to move, I'm not paying 6.5 or 7%. A lot of Americans are saying the same thing. If suddenly the Fed were to lower rates and mortgage rates tomorrow are 3%, everyone and their brother is going to be out looking for a home to buy, right? And suddenly it's going to tilt the market way off in the other direction. So that's why balance is important. Speaking of balance, there's one other thing that we're talking about that should be part of the conversation. And here's our weekly update. I read a article the other day about how hurricane season has been a little bit disappointing compared to forecasts, which has been great for people in areas that are prone to hurricanes. Now, I will say, Matt, checking this graphic like last week, there were a couple of these areas. By the way, National Hurricane Center watching 4 potential areas of development. There's a couple invests out here that are worth keeping an eye on. But last week, Matt, I think 1 or 2 of these areas was at medium risk, orange for developing. Now there's 4 different areas that there's pretty low chances of tropical development. One off the coast of Texas, one off the Mexican Peninsula, one off the East Coast by New Jersey, and there's still one very well out between, an area of Puerto Rico to the African coast.
Off the Horn of
Yeah.
Africa as it's making its way toward the Caribbean.
So there's a lot of areas of interest here, but Matt, we are in the prime of hurricane season right now, and forecasters say the start of the prime season is usually not as busy as the end of the prime season. And really now for the next week or two, we are in prime season. It usually starts to decline as we get later into September. So far, we haven't really seen any disruption, any at all from hurricane season. But this is the one wild card. Hurricanes could be the one wild card that could delay the onset of that $2.99 national average that we've talked about. It probably won't completely ruin it unless there's like a major category 5 that takes aim for Houston. Then, forget about
then all bets are off.
Then all bets are off. But I still think even if we do get a minor hurricane, it's not going to completely negate the potential of a 299 national average. It may delay it though. And let's hope that none of these areas develops. But this is something that, we are definitely going to be keeping an eye on. We'll keep folks updated. But boy, Matt, I mean, not even hurricane season. Oil prices are all in check right now. I feel like the good news, there's just a lot of it right now. A lot of more Americans are seeing sub $3 prices. Remember to fire up your Gas Buddy app because I've seen a lot of places where some stations are really aggressive in lowering prices and other areas. I think Paducah, I was looking at Paducah, your neck of the woods, and there were some stations over $3 and there were some stations at like $2.70 a gallon. So there's a huge variety in what people are paying. Make sure to
Very
fire up
large
the Gas
spread.
Buddy app.
Very large spread in this. It's a nice little UNESCO Creative Arts city, and there is quite a little spread there, no question. But not just even in that, but all across portions of Western Kentucky along the I-24 corridor as you're making your way toward Nashville, and then as soon as again you cross into Illinois, I'm seeing prices almost $1 a gallon higher, and in some cases more than $1 a
Yeah.
gallon higher.
Yeah, not a whole lot of competition when it comes to, north of the border, and that's just because there aren't as many stations in Illinois on the Illinois side of that border because prices are so much higher. So,
Yeah.
it never made much sense to have a lot of stations. Just kind of when you go to California to the Arizona border, there's more stations than the Arizona side because Arizona has for a long period of time been the cheaper state.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. So coming up over the next 7 days, you're kind of thinking prices will be continuing to fall a little tiny bit, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think, the national average is still 3.27 a gallon. It's down about 6 cents from a week ago. It could drop another 3 to 7 cents over the next week. So we could be here next week. And gas prices could be another 7 cents lower ish. We are now 51 cents lower than last year. Look at that, Matt. I do like that. Last year on the state, 3.78 a gallon. So yeah, I think most. By the way, good call out here because one area is not going to see much of a decrease. In fact, it could see an increase here. Let's look at the biggest changes in a week ago. Almost everyone is down from last week. Nebraska and Indiana looks like a little price cycle. The one market I'm a little worried about, Matt. I want to see if it's gone up. There's been some price cycles, it looks like, through this. San Francisco, Northern California could see some increases. Yeah, look at San Francisco is up already 6 cents from a week ago. There have been a couple little low-level refinery issues. Some refiners have been buying. So if you are in Northern California, you could see prices jumping. It might be a bit more substantial.
Mm. That was the only other question. You brought up the magic words, price cycle. Am I in the middle of a price cycle here across the Midwest, where all of a sudden, because I mean, once it cycles, I overnight will usually see a 30 to 40 cent a gallon increase. And then I kick myself because I'm like, I should have listened to Patrick and I chose not to. And I thought I'll get it tomorrow. And here we are. I'm paying 40 cents a gallon more than I would have 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
Am I in the middle of a price cycle or
Yeah,
what's going on?
if all the stations have gone up and you notice a 30 to 40 cent jump, it's probably a price cycle. Just like Sherman Denison is up 26 cents a gallon. Texas is an area that does see price cycles. I don't know what's going on. Grand Forks, North Dakota, up 23 cents from a week ago. That's not an area I'm familiar with as price cycling. Michigan City, definitely an area that price cycles. Michigan City, LaPorte, Indiana, up 22 cents from a week ago. Laredo, Texas, price cycling market up 19 cents. Corpus Christi, not a price cycling market, up 19 cents. Lafayette, Indiana, that is another price cycling market. You'll notice that in Northwest Indiana, price cycled. So did Lafayette, Indiana, up 18 cents. More price cycling markets down in Texas. Fort Worth up 17 cents. Dallas, Fort Worth definitely cycles. And so I'm guessing that prices there are still cheap. Yeah. They're still $2.94, but they are up 17 cents from $2.77 last week. That is exactly a price cycle. Prices went too low. Stations were not making margin, so they raised prices back up to about $2.99 a gallon. And now that they're back up, they're going to start undercutting, and that's going to bring lower prices back to Fort Worth, Dallas, Fort Worth. So yeah.
I'm going to ask you one final question, and it has to do with, and I'll just simply say it this way, a very recognizable grocery chain that also happens to have gas stations at majority of their grocery stores. I am seeing a price spread here at the three different stores they have here from between $2.79 to $2.96. And all of these prices are being reported by, to our friends and folks who've reported on Gas Buddy within just an hour or so apart. So why the price spread with the same exact people in such a small radius? Why is it normal to have one of their stations so much more expensive than the other when it's like a 15-minute drive between the two? What's
competition down the street? If there's an aggressive competitor nearby one of their grocery stores, that's going to force them to go down. So, that's why that people shop around. And if there's a station across the street and let's give a hypothetical. Say the grocery stores are both $3.19 a gallon, and there's a competitor nearby one of those grocery stores who goes from, say, $3.15 down to $2.99. Well, suddenly the grocery store is going to have to match the price, right? Because nobody's going to go to a station at $3.15 when they can go to one at $2.99. But the other grocery store doesn't want to match the lower price because they're quite a distance away. They might not even be looking at the price at the other grocery store, quite a distance away. And that's the name of the game. It's competition. Wherever there's a low price, if there's a Costco next door to you, you're going to have to compete with the Costco. You're not competing with somebody 15 minutes away from you. So that's why.
All right.
$1 million answer. But I think as we wrap up here, Matt, to sum up, gas prices are going down. A lot of places are below $3. There's 11 states below $3. By next week, it might be 13, 14, or 15, and it's going to mean more stations below $3 a gallon. So knock on wood, Mother Nature hopefully will help us cooperate. But for now, prognosis is good. It's gas prices are falling in the fall. Unfortunately, they will spring up in the spring. So enjoy this while it lasts, but the news is very good.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, don't forget, for those of you watching and listening, you can use your Gas Buddy card and save even more off of these falling prices. See, Patrick, I'm trainable. I'm telling you.
The Pay with Gas Buddy card. By the way, I saved $4.44 on my fill up of $16 last week. 25% off. That's nuts.
I saved over $50 using it on my trip to Washington, D.C. to see you in person and back. So there's that. That's like big savings, right? I mean, that's a lot of
that's big gas savings.
That's exactly what that is. That paid for a little extra here and there. So it was extra spending money at that particular point. And I enjoyed it. So yes, like and subscribe today. Find us on Facebook at Over a Barrel Show. Also on X at Over a Barrel Show. X formerly known as Twitter, I suppose. And you can also get a hold of Patrick on X at Gas Buddy Guy. And I am Over a Barrel Matt. And I've even gotten a few messages over the past weeks onto our Facebook page and some other aspects. So we are here to answer questions, even when we're not on a podcast, but we'll certainly ask them during the podcast as well. So that is going to wrap up everything here. Thank you, Patrick, once again, for all of your wonderful
and Matt,
insights.
for you.
Absolutely. We're all here together, right? So that's Over a Barrel. We'll talk again coming up really soon. Have a good one.
See you later.